Today, I'm going to be reviewing the first episode of the new Mr. McMahon documentary on Netflix. G'day everyone and welcome back. And yes, as I just said and by the title of this video, today I'm actually taking a step away from the cards because something new has just popped up. The new Mr. McMahon documentary is now on Netflix. So this is a multiple episode documentary about Mr. McMahon. So for those of you that don't know Mr. McMahon, he was the Chief Content Creative Officer of the WWF WWE. He also was the CEO of the WWF WWE. And he also was the chairman of the board for the WWE for a very long time. Just until recently, till Paul Triple H Levesque took over his role. So this documentary, we're going to be starting out with episode 1, which is called Junior. So basically, it's just a documentary of Vince McMahon, his upbringing of coming into the WWF, or I should just say wrestling kind of scenery and family. The top things he's done for the wrestling business and, also like things like allegations and things that didn't work out too well. But if you are new to the channel, just before we begin, I'd like to say we are officially on the road to 500 subscribers. So it would mean a lot if you could subscribe here down below. Also leave a like and a comment on this video, that also helps out. Make sure to turn on post notifications so when I upload you'll be the first to be notified. Also, if you're missing the card content today, jump over to my Instagram. We just finished with the Melbourne Comic and Toy Fair, which was on Sunday of the previous weekend, and I did happen to get some new WWE pickups. So check out my Instagram below. You can also find a link in description. I did pick up some new cards. I made a new Insta reel, so go over, show it some love, and check it out. If you are wanting to purchase any of the cards you may find interesting on my Instagram page, you can also jump over to my eBay where I have over 70 items listed. More will be coming after our next upcoming card show, which is the Oz National. For those that are interested into coming to the Oz National card show, this will be Australia's biggest card show yet. If you want to know all the information, check out my recent video on YouTube, which has all the details for the upcoming shows in Melbourne right through to the end of the year. You can also check out the Oz.National Instagram account. They have all the ticket info for the day and much more. So let's dive into episode 1 of the Mr. McMahon documentary. So like I said, the first things first, this episode comes out and is named Junior. This is the documentary of Mr. McMahon and his rise and fall of the WWF/WWE. This was recorded in 2021 and there is over 100 hours of interviews with legends like Stone Cold Steve Austin, Hulk Hogan, Cody Rhodes. There's also people in here to the current day like Triple H, Paul Levesque. We got family members Shane McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, and much more. So it starts off by him entering into the ring, and basically he jumps into the chair in the ring. He's ready for his interview, and straight out the gate he's just like, whoa, this is strange. I don't often speak about myself like this. We then get the question, is Vince McMahon a bad guy? Why is he a bad guy? We then learn that Mr. McMahon, he doesn't even know himself to this day. Do we even know Mr. McMahon to this day? Then things hit the fan. We jump straight into it, and Mr. McMahon, we learn he pays $3 million to one of his employees over some allegations. Mr. McMahon, he was a sex trafficker, which are the rumors in the wrestling business. He then comes straight out of the gates and he's like, nah, I can't do this basically. I'm not sharing all the real stories in detail. So we start off by getting some semi-interesting stories about Mr. McMahon and about his upbringing into the wrestling business. So the wrestling industry is seen as fake. But in reality, these are all real characters, these are all real human beings, and they go out there each week, every single day, and they go out there, they express their storyline, they express their character, and they express what they do in the ring to create and get the reaction from fans. So Vince was brought up into this business by his dad when they first met at just the age of 12. So that is already something where it's like, wow, he only met his dad at the age of 12. He goes through that he was, brought up with his mum in a trailer park. He also was there with an abusive stepdad, if you will. And to meet his dad, he said it was just, wow, it was unexpected. But just thinking about that now, if Mr. McMahon had never met his dad and hadn't been brought up into this wrestling business, would wrestling still be around to this day? That's a question that we don't know. So if you think about that, leave a comment down below. But he basically says his dad changed his life and changed the wrestling business for good. He first found out that his dad started this wrestling company, which was hosted in Madison Square Garden. I believe at the time it was called just Madison Square Garden Wrestling. And basically this show was just aired in its own little territory up in the south, I believe, of the United States. So like the WWE does now, and even with other wrestling promotions, the WWF, it never traveled around the United States. There were territories and lines where, the WWE or WWF had this section of the United States. There was the Mid-Atlantic and much more we'll get into further. Vince then goes on to explain that he first aired on TV at one of his dad's shows called All Star Wrestling. And basically what was happening was they needed an announcer, so someone that sits beside the ring and commentates the match. And basically what happened there was the current announcer they had at the time, they were coming out, they were about to start the show, and the announcer explains to Vince Sr., Vince McMahon's dad, that I'm not going out there unless you pay me more money. And there was all this kind of scramble and things happening. So Vince McMahon Jr., he goes to dad, well, what are we going to do? We can't go out there. You're the one. So Vince McMahon is selected by his dad to go out there and to be the announcer. So that was the first time Vince McMahon actually stepped into a wrestling ring, if you will. So even with zero experience, walking out there, Vince McMahon, massive thing to do in this growing industry. And he soon came to realize, wow, I'm out here and I have to commentate live to Madison Square Garden what's happening inside this ring. So soon after, Vince McMahon Sr., he wanted out of the business. At the time, he was partnered with the famous Gorilla Monsoon, which at the time he was an in-ring performer. I think Gorilla Monsoon, he might have wanted to take over the business from Vince as they were kind of partners. It was soon enough that Vince McMahon Jr., he soon explained to his dad that I'll take over the business. We'll share this business together. I'll take over if you want out. So Vince McMahon, he explained to his dad that I'll give you payments over a certain amount of months. If I don't make the final payment, you keep the business basically. And in the end, Vince McMahon Jr., he made the final payment, so the business was now his. His dad was now working for him in his now wrestling business. So this is now where Vince McMahon Jr., he really wanted to become beyond a wrestling business. He wanted to expand and he wanted to grow in the industry. He wanted pro wrestling to be a competition. So back to that thing I was saying before, where there were different wrestling companies and they basically had their little sectioned off territories of the United States. Vince McMahon, he basically wanted to invade. He wanted to headline his show across the whole of the United States. He wanted his show to be the #1 show. So just going off what I'm reading in front of me, we have the Mid-South Wrestling Company, we have Georgia Championship Wrestling, and then obviously there was the WWF and WWE. and he wanted to take these businesses over. There was other businesses also out there like the Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, American Wrestling Association, Stampede Wrestling. There was a few more out there as well. Because of agreements, no one could cross these territories. It was sectioned off. But Mr. McMahon, he had his plan. So what he did, and which I find very interesting and such a Vince McMahon thing to do, and when you're a business, you got to take these high risks. And one of these risks was he started advertising the WWF in other territories. So he was taking over from their part of the South up here to all around the United States in different territories. At the time, Eric Bischoff, he was working for American Wrestling Association, which was the Championship Wrestling. Eric Bischoff noticed he was a strong business. This was going to be his main competition in being the WWF. People that were made famous from the WWF, such as Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, he was out there and he was wrestling for the Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. He then also came across and transitioned into the WWF. So many legends started signing, and every week, every show of the WWF, more and more superstars he was bringing in. Andre the Giant, he came across from AWA, which was the American Wrestling Association. Rowdy Roddy Piper, he came across from the Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. Junkyard Dog came across from the Mid-South. Sergeant Slaughter came across from the Mid-Atlantic. So this is where things started to expand. Vince McMahon Sr., while working for his son, they came together and decided Bob Backlund, he's going to be our WWF heavyweight champion. But we can't just have a champion and we can't keep bringing in these legends. We need someone big and we need a star to come into this business. And then we saw the introduction of Hulk Hogan in 1979. The audience needed someone that they loved and someone that could outstand and perform week in and week out. So like I said, 1979, Vince McMahon Jr. first met Hulk Hogan. He was performing under the ring name Sterling Golden. And then obviously the name changed to Hulk Hogan. He was the big attraction in this wrestling business now. They had these things called TV matches at the time. What we refer that to now, Hulk Hogan stepping into the ring and basically fighting jobbers. 2 people at a time. He would get in there, even with one person, just destroy him. Vince McMahon used this to basically, like I said, attract people to this man and also bring viewers into this company because they see what Hulk Hogan's doing. This is amazing. Let's jump on this board. So at the time, Hulk Hogan received an offer to star in the new upcoming movie of Rocky number 3. Vince McMahon Jr. and Vince McMahon Sr. basically said, no, you're not doing this. We need you in this company. We want your money out of you. You can't do this or you'll be fired and you'll never return to the wrestling company or industry again. So what did Hogan do? He takes the offer and he joins Rocky 3. He took a big risk because he knows if the demand for me is so high, if they want so much money out of me because I'm performing well, I know I can go off and do this movie, make some more money, and then come back because they'll take me back straight away. So Hogan gets a phone call from AWA, which was the American Wrestling Association, and this was after they filmed the Rocky movie, and they say, can you get down here? We need you ASAP. So they've done the Rocky movie, Hogan flies in, and basically this is the start of the Hulkamania era, the ripping shirts and everything. So 1984, it comes to Hulk Hogan and Bob Backlund. They are teaming together in a tag team. We've got 2 of the biggest stars in the wrestling industry at the moment, if you will, performing in this great company, fighting together. But this would soon become a problem because Vince McMahon and his dad soon figured out, what are we doing? We can't have 2 of the biggest stars fighting together. Like, we can't have that. But we can't also have them fight against each other because they're the baby faces of the company. Which, for those of you that don't know wrestling slang, babyface is basically the good guy, and then you have the heels, which are the bad guys. So this is the thing I find very wise by the WWF at the time. So what they did, they used real outside world TV and scenarios and worldwide problems. They brought that into the WWF or the wrestling business to find heels or the bad guys. So this is where we saw the introduction of the Great Iron Sheik. Iron Sheik is from Iraq, and at the time there was lots of nationalism happening mainly across the United States, and they thought, if we're going to use Iran's hostages and what they're doing at the moment, let's bring him in as a bad guy. This is somewhere where people outside of the world can come into an arena, basically boo. It's just depicting that you've done this, so this obviously makes you the bad guy. So this is where Iron Sheik became a heel because of what was happening in the outside world, because of his nationality. So soon after, movies began to come out about Japan invading the United States. So then the WWF goes, okay, let's get some Japan talent, bring them in, and they're a heel. They're obviously going to be a heel because the US is going to hate them because of real world issues. Countries like this were seen as untrustworthy. There were also countries like Russia and Germany. So the WWF brought in wrestlers from Russia and Germany that competed around the country. This was their way of saying foreigners equal bad people. Bad people equal the heels for the business. Here we can have now Hulk Hogan versus the Iron Sheik. This is going to be massive. We have the US going against Iran. The whole crowd is basically from the United States. Obviously, we're going to cheer the guy from the United States because we don't want this guy who's doing bad things in a bad country win. So Vince McMahon, he followed the outside world values and brought them into his wrestling business. But then Vince McMahon thought, let's make this guy champion. So Iron Sheik was crowned the WWF World Heavyweight Champion. A guy from Iran who was, like I've just been saying, bad countries, bad values, he's a heel. We've just made him champion in our country of the United States. So he became hated. He became hated as champion. And as we learned through the company, you know, we kind of learned just to have baby faces and heels and heel turns and baby face turns. But the Iron Sheik was a legitimate bad guy from a bad country, and now he's our champion. Are we even supposed to cheer for him as champion? So then, like I said, they brought in Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan had a match. He came in as the hero with the Iron Sheik. They fought out for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship. The American hero came out on top, and they were crowned a new champion. The crowd went wild, and just like Hulk Hogan knew, if he had gone off and done this Rocky thing and then come back, because the WWF know the high demand, now look at him, your hero's champion. So then came the passing of Vince McMahon Sr. at just the age of 69. The first time ever, the day before he passed away, he told his son, Vince McMahon, I love you. And that was the first time Vince McMahon spoke about it and said, this is the first time he told me that. So after all this succeeding in this company and what Vince McMahon Jr. has done, his father's now passed away and he has to boost himself and still run this fast growing business. So Vince McMahon really wanted to start bringing in more attraction to his company and not just have more people of the older age, if you will, middle age. He wanted to bring it to younger viewers as well. So he started bringing in entertainment segments, more backstage interviews, and things that kids can kind of engage in as well. So that was a smart thing for Mr. McMahon. Then what he did was he started invading. He started invading the United States and those territory systems. And then the USA Network became the marketing network for the WWF across America. So now Vince is on this massive cable of the USA Network. He needs to start bringing more attraction. He starts his own talk show. He calls it the TNT talk show. And basically he used this to advertise characters, express storylines, bring in more viewers, and let them understand what's happening in this business. Then the biggest thing probably happened for this business, and that is that the WWF brought in female wrestlers. And the way they did this was they actually used Cyndi Lauper from the song Girls Just Wanna Have Fun. She just dropped her new album, I think it was 4 or 6 songs or something. She did this film in her music video, and she was working for MTV, which was and still is, the music television. In her music video, there was a wrestler at the time which was acted as her father. The WWF, or Vince McMahon, brought him and her into the next wrestling show, and they brought Cyndi Lauper in not only to advertise her new album, but to advertise their business as, look, Cyndi Lauper's here, and look, Cyndi Lauper's in the WWF. So Vince McMahon then started airing wrestling shows on MTV. Cyndi Lauper, MTV. WWF, MTV. This is huge. So the start of women's wrestling is now introduced. Cyndi Lauper makes a phone call to WWE Hall of Famer in being Wendy Richter. Cyndi Lauper said, hey, do you want to come in and basically be my manager or presenter for my upcoming match? So look at this now. We have Cyndi Lauper from Girls Just Wanna Have Fun, probably her most famous song, We're Growing. So Vince thinks, what else can we do to grow? And this is where Mr. T was introduced to wrestling from Hulk Hogan. So at the time, I believe they were good friends, and this is massive. You know, Mr. T was huge at the time, and so was Hulk Hogan, and this business was sparking. So you got two red hot people, and they're bought into this wrestling industry. So obviously after the passing of Vince McMahon Sr., Vince McMahon Jr. then decided a lot's happening right now. I'm just going to take a couple of days off. Him and his wife Linda went on a vacation, and while they were on vacation, he thought, we need to do something big. We're going to basically have a show like the Super Bowl, which for us in Australia is like the AFL Grand Final. And we're going to call it WrestleMania. It's going to be one show a year, and we're going to have all our superstars come in and compete, and this is going to be our big show. So March 31st at 1 p.m. they decided WrestleMania is going to air to TV. Not only would this air to TV, but Vince McMahon thought, let's open a closed circuit. So basically a closed circuit was different arenas, Vince opening different arenas around the United States of America, which had big screens where basically he could air his show, where people pay to come in and watch WrestleMania on a big screen. So in a way, I guess you could kind of maybe compare it to going to watch the movies. And not only would he open a closed circuit, but he also aired it to 24 foreign channels. So now you have these heels in the company which are foreigners, like the Iron Sheik from Iran, you have the Germans, you have the Russians, you have the Japanese. Vince McMahon opened 24 circuits basically to foreign countries so they can watch their stars compete. So leading up to WrestleMania, Hulk Hogan and Mr. T, they went on to Saturday Night Live, which is just a talk show to basically advertise WrestleMania. And during the process, John Stossel, who was the TV presenter, he commented and questioned Hulk Hogan. And this is where you can kind of say it was a downfall. He questioned Hulk Hogan saying, you know, do you use razor blades to cut yourself open? And this is where the business was kind of being discovered as fake. The wrestling industry is fake and it's not real. The blood isn't real. The actions in the ring aren't real. But obviously, like I said towards the start of this video, these people are human beings stepping in the ring to perform and express their storylines, express their characters, and to put on a good show. So this is where the wrestling business was starting to become exposed to the public eye. So Vince McMahon then wanted someone, he basically said at a show, someone take care of this reporter. This reporter was backstage at a show. David Schultz, who was a wrestler at the time, he did take care of him. Vince wished someone would take care of him. He never asked. So David Schultz came in. He basically slapped him and said, do you think wrestling's fake? he slapped him. This is a massive part of a downfall for Vince McMahon. So John Stossel, he actually came out on his talk show and he said he sued the WWF. His doctor noted that the smack had impacted his ears so hard that his hearing was damaged and could potentially be damaged for the rest of his life. Not a good thing when you're trying to host a massive WrestleMania. Hulk Hogan and Mr. T went on another talk show to advertise WrestleMania, and the same thing happened. The presenter basically said, "I want you to put me in a headlock" type thing. So Hulk Hogan gets up, he puts him in a front chin lock. After a few seconds, Hogan drops him. The presenter falls to the floor, and basically he's not knocked out, but he was seriously injured, and the back of his head actually did start to bleed. So they had to cut to a break, and then it came out that he sued Hulk Hogan, he sued Mr. T, he sued Vince McMahon, and he sued the WWF. And mind you, this was all happening around WrestleMania time. So this is not what the WWF and most importantly Vince McMahon wanted, because they really wanted to have this. This was their one chance at having a good show. This was their one chance to make WrestleMania WrestleMania. So 1985 WrestleMania goes to air. This is going to be the biggest show of the year. They have to succeed in this show in order to keep their business alive. So we see wrestlers like Hulk Hogan, Mr. T, the Iron Sheik, Rowdy Piper, Cyndi Lauper, Muhammad Ali even gets in there for the main event for a special guest referee gig. Vince McMahon had basically won the world. You know, like I said, these different territories came around and WrestleMania was aired in these closed circuits. Different foreign countries also aired this show, and this was huge. The WWF and Vince McMahon, he had basically won. But obviously following, such a rise came another downfall, and after WrestleMania, allegations came out that the wrestlers were drug using, they were using steroids, there were sex allegations against Vince McMahon. Lots of things that they didn't want to go wrong had gone wrong. WWF scandals were being issued and talked upon across the United States on television. This is not what Vince McMahon had hoped for after just having this grand show. So basically, the episode finishes off with a few little key information notes, just saying that the lawsuits were both settled, both from the man who had been smacked and could potentially have permanent damaged hearing, and also the man who fell to the ground after Hulk Hogan's front chin lock and started to bleed. So that there wraps up the first episode of the Mr. McMahon documentary, and I cannot wait to watch episode number 2, episode number 3. If you did enjoy this video, leave a comment down below if you'd like to see a review on episode number 2 and so forth. So make sure to jump over if you can on Netflix. I highly recommend to watch this documentary. I myself am going to continue watching it now. It's been a pleasure having you. My battery life is flashing at me, so this is perfect timing. Don't forget, we're on the road to 500 subscribers. Subscribe down below where we might be doing a possible giveaway. I still am in the process of thinking about that. Check out the eBay as well. Also check out the Instagram for almost everyday content. I can't wait to see you all in next week's video. It's been a pleasure. We'll catch you all in the next one.